Okay, hello. Well, it is still me, Garnet, and it is still Sunday, August 16th, 2026. And I am here in the Chiang Mai office. And as I said just before, yep, it's I'm not working, but here I am anyway, t-shirt, I didn't shave kind of day. Okay, this is some tiptoeing and poking in and around a general theme that we will be revisiting in different ways, in different steps, video to video, in this kind of risky, controversial, or I don't know, concept. Are brainwaves real? Okay. I think most of you have heard a saying that the map is not the territory. The map is not the territory. It represents the territory. It could be in detail or it can be general. It could be accurate or not accurate, but that's what a map does. It represents the territory. Now, here's where sticky tricky. The EEG readouts and all the things that we hear at a higher level of science, where there's a mixed perspective, and a more simple, popular level where we try to make things very simple and certain and accurate and sometimes make a mistake. Okay. So these days, here, yep, treble. The saying, everything is a frequency, is extremely popular, is considered at the vanguard of concept and philosophy. It's, I think, intended to be a pushback against reductionistic materialism. Everything is a frequency. This is the way I would interpret that. And let me say this first. I don't know what energy is. I think nobody knows. I mean, classically, it's a measure of work done. Okay. Are there little elves doing it, or little atoms, or quantum angels? I can say, and I think this is correct, all frequencies are vibrations. All frequencies are vibrations, but not all vibrations are frequencies. So what do you mean? Well, what's a frequency? I think the concept is that a frequency is a highly regular, repeating signal. That's what makes a frequency a frequency. You know, the famous ones. 40 hertz, it's on everybody's mind, literally, maybe. Or things like 528 hertz, kind of magical kind of way of thinking, in my opinion. The idea that everything is a frequency, as we look at our human brain with the best, newest neuroscience that we have, the electrochemical activity that we can measure either superficially with electrodes in the skull or with invasive things in different ways, that it's filled with this electrochemical activity that has an electrical expression that we call frequencies. Well, here's the news, as best as I understand it. The majority of the electric expression in the brain is aperiodic. Periodic means regular and repeating, the period. A means not regular and repeating. The majority, most of the time, conservatively at a low point, would be maybe 70%, oftentimes up to 90%, and in certain cases, in certain areas, 100% aperiodic. So what are these brainwave frequencies? Well, they do occur. They express in different ways at different times. In certain parts of the brain, it's a little easier. They have somewhat more predictability, but they are extremely fleeting in terms of a pure frequency. If you don't believe me, dive into it. It's all there. Admittedly, a lot of the more current information is refining and kind of pushing back, pushing down some of the earlier assumptions. So what the hell is a brainwave frequency? What if I say, oh, it's theta, it's 7 hertz, or it's gamma, it's 40 hertz, things, or 10 hertz, or whatever. That is all over in the language, especially in academics for sure, but also at a kind of a scary level of simplicity in a lot of commercial claims. And why do I bother with this stuff? Well, one, I think it's fascinating. The other is this kind of exploration has been and is and will be at the heart of neurovisor brain engagement. Why am I giving it a different name? Why don't I just say entrainment? Well, because all of this premise is certainly under scrutiny and has a lot of disagreement. And so that, again, in my curious, confused, and concerned perspective, that draws my attention. So I'll use an analogy. I'm not sure if it's really, accurate enough, but at least as an image, I think it works. At least it does for me. Here's my analogy. It's like looking at the ocean, and depending on circumstance, on the surface of the ocean, you have waves. Sometimes in a doldrum, back in the sailing days, that was terrible. It's just flat. Then you've got ripples. Then you've got, beach rhythms. Then you've got big rolling waves. I never would have been a sailor. Still wouldn't want to be in the big rolling, huge waves. But that's fundamentally a surface phenomena of the ocean. What do we have? What's the vast majority? Deep currents, tides, thermal layers, all sorts of things that are the vast majority of what makes the ocean the ocean. And here with the brain, by my honest, amateurish attempt to understand, that's what's going on in the brain. So I think the convenience of believing the map is the territory leads us into all sorts of activities and claims and efforts. To me, there's an awful lot to consider, because when we put something on the brain, most simply like EEG, although there are other forms that are more technically advanced, sophisticated, and expensive and complicated, but the EEGs are still standards. Is the output, is the report actually a report of what is truly going on in the brain, or is it a kind of interpretation, which is that map territory analogy? It is an interpretation. And at higher and lower levels, this involves what is called the algorithm. The algorithm is essentially a mathematical process that takes signals in their raw form, interprets them into a representation by transforming a lot of complicated stuff, a lot of detail, into a representation that is highly simplified so that there is a correlation, but they are in no way the same real activity. I think the analogy, I like analogies, is an interpreter, a language interpreter. These days with AI, that's a whole other thing. But for most of history, two people speaking foreign languages, they don't understand each other. There's a third person that comes that knows both and interprets. And I've always had, I've had experiences with interpreters. I think many of you probably have. And it's always interesting when the other person, not me, is talking in their own language for, let's say, 2 minutes. And then the interpreter gives me a 10-second summary. I think, well, wasn't there more than that? I mean, why did it take he or she 2 minutes and you were able to convert that to me into my language in 10 seconds? Something's going on here. I'm not sure what it is. So this is what algorithms do. There's this thing called the Fourier transform, and now there is, for a long time, there's been the fast Fourier transform. What does that mean? Well, and there are lots of variables on it now, but it's really sort of the root and standard in many of these processes, where there's all of this activity, this aperiodic activity going on in the brain. And the algorithmic process is kind of seeking evidence of certain periodic activities. And it can look for 1 second, it can look for 4 seconds, it can look for long, but it takes it in chunks. And it says, anything in here, anything, it's like panning for gold, another loose analogy. It says, here's something that's there's evidence of things in between 8 hertz and 12 hertz. And depending on the size of the bins, they want to look at it a whole number. Do they use 1 decimal point? Do they use 2 decimal points? And it says, here's something here. I'm going to harvest that. I don't know if this is precisely the way it is, but as I understand, I'm going to accept that, even though it's kind of messy, it's very analog. I'm going to attempt to make it simple. And I'm going to say, okay, in here, there's a bunch of high mountains, low mountains, big valleys, wide valleys, but it kind of averages out to an alpha. That's only but that, 8 to 12 hertz is just a convention. It's a decision made by people. Let's just do that. But, it can be higher or lower. And let's just say, that's alpha. There's alpha there, and it looks an awful lot like 10 hertz. So it takes that, it transforms this kind of complicated, they would say messy or noisy stuff, into something that is extremely simplified and is converted mathematically, transformed into a signal that represents what's there, but is not really what's there. It's a much easier way of relating to it. Okay. I don't think I'll do it right now. That's enough, blah, blah, blah for the moment. But there are a couple of things that we need to look at about how we relate to this simplified representation, the map, not the territory. Yeah, one is called the reverse inference fallacy. I wrote about that a little bit on Facebook. And the other is in the inverse fast Fourier transform fallacy. Kind of complicated names, but I'll explain what they are soon enough. And I'll leave you off with something that, again, I don't claim, I'm not a highly trained PhD neuroscientist. I'm a civilian scientist, is what I've claimed before, which is not my way of hiding. It's just the truth. But I have this maybe horrible name for common brainwave frequencies that are used all the time. I say that they are mathematical lies of convenience. Now, if that doesn't poke the bear in the eye, I don't know what will. But let's keep on going. And if you're following this, that's very kind of you. I'll do my best. Until next time. Bye-bye.